All right. Hey, Dan, how's it going, man?
Really good, really good. Glad to be here.
Good. Hey, so let's start off by just giving the audience a little background, on what you do and, what's Dan all about?
So I have been in financial services and some different arms of it, lending, banking, and the investment and kind of holistic planning side for 30 years, since the mid 90s. I'm also a motorcycle rider and a Rotarian and a few other fun things out there. But I just, I work with clients with the knowledge that I've built over those 30 years, just helping them, sort of being there. Sometimes we call it a quarterback, but sometimes being their offensive coordinator, depending on what they want to do, helping them, meet their goals, plan for their kids, protect their families. There's a lot of avenues to it, but insurance, investments, financial services, banking, lending, all been part of my career.
Yeah, I went over your profile, man. It's you've been doing it a lot. You know money really well.
Yeah, it helps.
So I'm sure with all the clients you have, you probably have a few that are either working in skilled trades or connected to it.
Yeah, definitely have.
Yeah. So give us what are some of the challenges that you see, like when clients come to you, whether for, financial investment assistance or just help, guidance on financial matters? What are some of the things that are popping up over and over, ideally specifically for folks that are working in or around skilled trades? Yeah.
There's two things that really came to mind when you had asked me to be on here and speak with the skilled trades. And one is the disability world, because you're using your body, and that's what you're all about when you're a tradesperson. And, you've got it's white collar, blue collar. So in that world, and the other one is that a lot of the people are independent contractors. So I think, everybody's the same. You've got to have good fundamentals. You've got to get the basics down. Obviously you've got to save, and you've got to save for retirement and do all those things right and protect your credit and all those things. But I'll tell you how I start with almost every client, because I think it applies. There's three industries that control money in this world. That's banks, brokerages, and insurance companies. And that pretty much wraps almost everything there is in there. But you should be working, anybody, a business owner, an independent contractor, with all of those. You've got to do your everyday banking. That's easy. You got a mortgage on your house and stuff. That's easy. You got credit cards and bills and using money right. But you've also got to protect yourself and your family as a tradesperson. You're the ATM. You're the guy. You're the person making, I shouldn't say guy. You're the person making the money. And if you get hurt, that money stops. So you got to make sure, that if you get hurt, what happens? Can you go a month without it? Because I think a lot of people in the trades are probably job to job, paycheck to paycheck. And if you can't do one, I think that's really important. And then because if they're independent contractors, is there a retirement plan? Is there benefits? Because you've got to provide your own. And that's gotten tougher and tougher in this world. Maybe they're union, maybe they're associations, but those things that people, they want to think about bidding the next job, but you've got to, if you're not doing it right, if you're not protecting yourself, I think you can get in a lot more trouble than one less job.
Yeah. And the other layer that makes it difficult for skilled trade workers as well as business owners is all businesses are cyclical, right? The economy runs in 6 to 7 year waves. That impacts all Americans. But there's a lot of trades out there that are weather dependent. Like I think about, HVAC contractors, roofing contractors, those guys. So they have the personal injury side of it, when things happen, they break stuff, you're getting injured, that impacts your income stream. And then if you have a situation come up where the weather comes in and man, if you're not prepared for that, it's really, really tough.
Yeah. And I'm in Arizona, so I know what you mean with HVAC guys. There's a time of the year that they work a lot and a time that they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And, the biggest thing I would say to the cyclical part of it is you got to have your plan. I mean, so when it comes to funding your retirement, things like that, if you have a plan that, hey, there's 10 things I need to take care of each year, when your high times are. And listen, it might be the same time when they buy more tools and they buy a new truck too, but take care of those things during the high times if you have a plan for them. Funding, college planning for your kids, all those, you have to do them. So if you have a list and you put it in the right priority, and I think that's working with, whether it's just a little budgeting software or a professional who's really getting into it. But I think it's no different than really any business owner, but you've got to pay yourself first. That's something that you hear a lot. Even if just same with setting aside for your taxes, all of those things, you've got to just make a plan. If it's your first year, find a mentor and figure out what those wild cards that you got to prep for are. And, my business is the same way growing up. It's you work commission to commission, especially when you're building a business. So sometimes there might be a month or two that things don't close and you've got to prepare for it for sure.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been talking about quite a bit, Dan, is the importance of what you're referring to as budgeting, and and trying to make sure that you have an emergency fund built up, which is the other thing that you mentioned, that if income goes away, that you have enough money to sustain yourself until you recover from that injury, or the weather changes and you get back to work or whatever. Now, do you offer those types of really focused support for your clients? Like, let's say you have a client come into you, and and I'm sure this has happened to you. Maybe they inherited some money, right? So they come to you initially to get some help with, all right, what do I do with this pile of cash? And then the more you get to talking to the individual, you find out this person's a train wreck. They have no, I mean, they're going to blow through all this money in a year or two if they don't get this under control. I mean, do you help? Are you a free safety that way to say, wait a minute?
Yeah. And it's funny you said free safety, because I was about to say, athletes are a big one. They don't have to win the lottery. I've been fortunate enough to work with some here, Arizona Cardinals and other athletes, and especially rookies. They get a pile of money and they go through it, and they don't even realize they only get paid for half the year. But I've actually worked with lottery winners. Inheritance is certainly a big one, or just receiving a big bonus. But yeah, and and budgeting is a broad category too, because most people think of budgeting as their monthly expenses. What's my rent? What's my this? How much do I have left? How much fun can I have? Great. But you also have to, again, am I paying myself? Am I putting it in my retirement plan? Now we have, and I'm somebody who's experienced this firsthand, parents that were long-term care. You go on disability. I mean, we're talking about not hundreds of dollars, thousands and thousands per month that can be unexpected. And you've got to either put away for it or do the right things to insure for it. And, I think it is about building an emergency fund. Is that 1 month? Is that 6 months? Or there's ways to do it without cash. I mean, you could also have a line of credit on your house if you have a lot of equity. That can be your reserve. And by the way, you can't wait till you're hurt and you're not working to get those things. So it's all about the planning. So I think and in my practice, I work at both ends of the spectrum. I work with 22-year-olds who are starting in the world and they want to do $100 a month into something. That's sort of my passion project, and getting term insurance because they're new parents kind of thing. And then the other end, which is somebody's retiring from a major company or maybe selling their business, and now they're going from what we call accumulation to distribution. You're going to rearrange everything. I'm going to turn my Social Security on. Do I have a pension? Do I have other benefits? Where's the insurance going to come from? So, I mean, we absolutely do it in our practice. It's usually just by the person. If they ask for the help, and I work closely with a partner, so I would say we sometimes, we're going to do it. We're going to sit down and as much as they want to break it down, people can get full financial plans that goes down to the penny, or they can do it the old-fashioned way, but with a pad and a paper. I like the pad and paper personally.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. It's a challenge specifically for skilled trades, I think, because a lot of the individuals that are, there's a big conversation going on right now. Do I go college? Which, by the way, to be official here, so I don't get a million emails, I'm not anti-college. But if you have a conversation going on between parents and their young adults about college or trade, and they choose to go into trade, they kind of have a unique challenge because they didn't get financial training in high school. They just don't really offer it anymore. And then one of the stories I hear time after time is these folks go into, let's say they'd be an electrician. They start out with a union, non-union shop. I don't care. And they're starting them out at 20, 25 bucks an hour, whatever they do just to get these young folks. And then if they're good and they're sharp and they move up the ladder, within just a couple of years, these folks are making, well into the six figures, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't know how to manage money. So the next thing they got, like you said earlier, they got a brand new truck, they got a jet ski, and they get strapped down with all these payments. And, by the time I run into them, they're like, Martin, I don't know where all my money's going. I'm making great money. I just don't have nothing to show for it. Right. And then I have to pull out the most boring thing in the world. You're going to need to figure out a way to budget.
Yeah.
Do you run into that in your practice very much? That
tremendously, especially it's those couple of years, it's that big ramp up, right. You go from making six figures to 100 grand to 200 grand. You some of that had to get saved. You can't just go on a wild spending spree. And yeah, I mean, people saying they're real estate rich or they're toy rich and they got the coolest cars and they keep upgrading, and a big work truck these days can be 100 grand. Easy. It's not the old basic Ford that you and I probably grew up on. These Denali's that you see, I mean, they're super expensive. So, I mean, people have to have an awakening, but you hit on something I think is really important. people can make a lot of money. Some of the biggest clients that I've had over the years are the roofer that now does roofs for hotels. It's because he grew it bigger. The pool guy who does pools for hotel because he grew it bigger. Landscapers. I mean, all of the whatever, custom carpenters, custom cars. A welder can be a heck of a career. And I actually like what you said a lot with the college. It's not about skipping college, but you kind of hit it right on the head. You miss some of the basics. College isn't necessarily for learning your skill. I happen to have an economics degree. I'm like the only guy I know who's in a field that uses their degree. And I think people just get degrees and then they do something totally different. But, it's the basic things that you learn. Again, so I think, yeah, I mean, I'm glad some of the trades, I know like in restaurants and things like that, they do teach them also how to run the restaurant. It's not just about cooking. So, I mean, that is something maybe when you're looking for a trade school, are they doing some business management too? Because the guy could be the best carpenter in the world, but he has never balanced his checkbook. And when there starts being tens of thousands of dollars coming in jobs, I've seen it too with bidding jobs. People bid a job and they're not making any money.
Right.
That's not good. You've got to build something in there. I mean, yeah, you might pay your guys or your team or your staff, but what's the point?
Right.
So
I noticed on your Facebook page, you had an article that caught my attention. You posted just recently on August 26th. You talked about benefits and employers. And I want to delve into that a little bit because
Sure.
one of the biggest things happening, I don't care, you pull over any contractor, roll down your window and say, hey, what's your biggest problem? And they're going to tell you,
employees.
I can't find anybody that wants to work. And when I do find somebody and they're good, my competitor down the street swipes them from me or her, right? I was intrigued by your article. It was basically talking about employers and how in offering, making sure that your benefits package is in order for your employees, and what are some creative ways, where that you could suggest that employers could maybe use cost-effective benefits without breaking themselves or having to price up their jobs so high to include that stuff.
Yeah.
What's the best value now?
I think there's two things. One, just to mention those articles. Yeah, I mean, the cost of finding employees and training new employees, and just turnover replacement is, when people break it down, again, this is a budget thing, the math is much higher than actually just paying the employee 10% more. So people have to look at that. What does it cost when you have to go? You got to go do it yourself. You got to work double. You got to pay one of your other people double time or overtime. So that I think that's one rational thing that people really got to look at. Hey, I don't want to pay more than $30 an hour, but paying 40 might actually save you, a lot of money. I think that's one thing. I think with benefits, it's about offering the platform. I think a lot of business owners get scared because they think, if I'm going to offer health insurance, it's going to cost me money. It doesn't have to. I mean, the average independent person, and there was things with Obamacare and all that stuff, and not to get into, but it's hard for an individual person to get any of their own plans. Sure, you can do an IRA, you can do those things, but to get health insurance, whereas a group plan is much easier. But I think the employees a lot of times will pay. They just need the platform. Do the hard part for them, set it up, and do the payroll deduction. I don't think they mind paying. It's like, if you want to, offer it for their families, great, but they can pay for it. So I think that's one thing. And even when it comes to small 401k and retirement plans and benefits, I mean, a lot of them are employee driven. They can cover the costs. You don't have to have the whole nut in your budget, but you've got to execute the plan for them. And I think that's probably something that scares a lot of employers away. They don't want to go down that road. But again, to the reason on that article, I work for an organization, Mass Mutual, that we are hybrid employees. So there's a benefits package. I pay for it all myself. And I don't mind sharing that. But I mean, the place down the road, you may be an independent contractor, which means if I don't have 3 or 4 employees that are under my umbrella, and this is the same with doctors' offices, I mean, a lot in the trades, because you just got independent. So there's ways to do associations and things. There's a way to do, these group benefits where you can partner with other companies. It's pooled employer plans. I think that's definitely something people can look in, because they may only be themselves. And, just talking to someone who knows it's important. I think it's just like you're going to have a skilled carpenter or contractor to build your house. Don't just go with the cheapest guy that, you think's going to maybe do a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. You mentioned something that I want to get your opinion about, because this is impacting me. And I've had a few people, my contractor buddies, talking about it too. A lot of these contractors, they own a business, but as you said, a lot of their employers, whenever possible, they're going they're going to book them as outside contractors.
Yeah.
Although,
1099 probably for the most.
yeah. Although like states like California, they really put the screws to that. They, man, you can claim somebody's an outside contractor, but sometimes, there's a lot of legislature that I hear, like California is a big one because we're in Oregon, right? So I hear about all the horror stories going on in California. But anyway, so you have an employer who has most of his staff, his field staff, outside contractor. That employer needs healthcare, so it's really common for these business owners to use Affordable Care Act because if you're smaller, when you get bigger, your income gets to a point where you get no subsidies, right? Because the subsidies you get is based on your adjusted gross income. And I don't want to get too wonky about it, but anyway, the new law they passed a few months back, the big beautiful bill, I think they called it, whatever.
Yeah.
They made some adjustments to the subsidy packages. And what's weird about it was they gave no runway on it. They basically said, all right, as of 2026 policy year, these are going to be your new subsidies. And well, like, what are they? Well, we don't know yet, but they're going to be dramatically cut. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, these contractors out there, they've been engineering their adjusted gross income because you can get away with it by writing off stuff. You can really engineer your adjusted gross income pretty easily. But I'm thinking, man, these people, the media is not reporting on it. And it's going to be a big surprise when they put all their numbers in. All right, they get in there, put their numbers in, and they find out, whoa, this policy the policy I had for 25 was $1,800 a month, and with my subsidies, my wife and I were insured for $300 a month because you get this big subsidy.
Yep.
And whoops, it's gone because I make too much money. Are you hearing anything about that at all?
I mean, full disclosure, health insurance is the one I do the least of.
Okay.
I've got some great partners.
Smart man.
But what you're saying is right on. And it's just, I don't want to ever give anybody bad advice, and health is complicated. But what I will say, and I think where it gets tricky, is that same AGI playing around I want to do it here because it lets me put more money in my SEP, my simplified employee pension, but I don't want to do it here. Again, you get whatever the person is, they make 300 grand, but it's how much what's their salary? Might be 75, might be 150. They bonus it out. They leave it in the company. They have the company own the car. This just goes back to get a good team around you. You've got to have a good business CPA. You've got to have, people that do that and they set up LLCs. But again, the more you separate, now you're not a group anymore because you don't have 10 employees. Doctors are famous for this. They have like a little PLLC, Physicians LLC. So they're a one-man band. And then they have a different company that everybody works for. So it's like they get two, but what's the lesser of two evils? As far as those subsidies and things, I mean, they're ever changing. And, I think there's, something that was around in the 80s that kind of came back, and I still call it like staff leasing, and then these big, those things are back. And so that there could just be a big, and it might be through your payroll company using Paychex or ADP or one of these big boys because they have these programs in there. And, when you're starting out, sometimes that's what you got to do. That's not who I recommend my clients that have 50 employees. They can get it better, but sometimes just getting part of that big system, just like using the big bank because they got more services. And, when you have the strength and a position, then you can kind of flip it around. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. And who could be an expert on it when they don't even know what the rules are, even though they're
it's a big deal. It really is. You said something, Dan, I want to make sure that it gets highlighted in this recording. So if you're a business owner and, you're not big enough to bring in a ton of services to support your business, as soon as you can afford it, you want a good investment guy, Dan. Mm-hmm. You want a good CPA that, like you said, a business CPA.
A business one.
Yeah, that's right. And have a relationship, whether that be through Rotary or some social club, with a good lawyer. You don't necessarily have to pay them any money. Just know who they are, get to know them a little bit.
Yeah, you can get some good, easy advice from friends or somebody else's. When you got to go to court, you need to hire them.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly right. I mean, you hit around the head. I mean, I'm involved with a lot of organizations, and I give people advice all the time that aren't necessarily my clients because they ask, what do I do here? Well, go talk to this guy, or health insurance. Go talk to this guy. Again, no different than I'm going to ask my carpenter who can do my roof because they're their own little circle. So yeah, when you see the guy who seems to have a better business, ask him what he's doing, in your market, and you'll know. Take a referral. It's what makes the world go round, I guess.
Yeah. So out of the products, what are your core products that you offer, Dan? I know you do a bunch of stuff. Like, what's your thing?
I think I focus more than a lot of people on the protection side because and that means life insurance, disability, long-term care. But those aren't not necessarily for everybody, and they're a budget thing. But I think that some people do all investments, some people do all insurance. I am much more, and the word gets tossed around, but a holistic planner, which means we want to look at, and that's why I started with that fundamentals. We got to see what's there. And with my clients or with anybody, they're going to put it in the order that's important to them. Some people say, hey, I don't have kids. I'm not going to have kids. I don't necessarily need to leave a legacy behind. So great. Or there's no way I'm going to have long-term care because I'll take myself out of it before that happens. Get that. But that now we're getting to a different generation where a lot of people are like me. They've lived it. And so now it's important to them, and I've got some things that, a lot of stories that I tell clients, things that happened in my family. I had a brother with an illness who passed early. I mean, you've got to get these fundamentals in place, and fundamentals that I'm talking about, like life insurance. I mean, but you can do that for $20 a month. Okay. It's not a big expense. The disability insurance, it could easily be done for under $100. These are not thousands of dollars to at least get something, because it is a lot easier. I'm going to use something from my motorcycle world. People love to do these GoFundMe things when somebody crashes their motorcycle and passes early. And every time they do it, they collect thousands of dollars. But if everybody would just put their own $100 in their thing, nobody would need to do that. We're all happy to give $20 and donate to the other guy. And I sit on my high horse and just go, will you people just do this yourselves? And so you have to, car washes and GoFundMes. So I'm happy to give somebody else $100, but I won't do it for myself. And I lean on that with our clients. I mean, you can do it somewhere else. You can have it already done. You can say I do it at work, but that's good until you change jobs. That's an old story that a lot of people told because they stayed at companies for 30 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen anymore. So you can keep switching until the one time you can't.
Yeah. So Dan, if somebody comes to you, so let's say I want to just wrap up our conversation, but
sure.
I want to kind of just get your feedback on this. So let's say you have a late 20 something, 30 something come to you, you met them through a contact or whatever. They say to you, hey, Dan, look, I got this little roofing company and, we're making pretty good money, making a good living at it. I've got a wife and I've got a kid now. What are the things I should be doing and they're not doing anything. They're basically just
for that person, because that's a great one. That's that fundamentals. And I'm going to try to do it from the trade side. If they're young, again, basic term insurance, it's a must with people that we work with. Again, very low dollar. They have to have some kind of reserve account. Again, that's not what they're doing with me. That's just me saying, you need to, I can't have you spending $500 a month on retirement until you have these basics in place.
Oh, you're talking like an emergency fund kind of thing.
Yeah, have that reserve. Obviously we want to go in and do you have any high interest credit card debt and things like that? Because it's great to say I have 10 grand in the bank, but if you have 20 grand in your credit cards, don't do that. You'd rather just use it, pay it, because it's not, so sometimes those basics. But I think from the trades, I think, again, some type of disability, even if it's like an AFLAC kind of, I get hurt, I get a check, you've got to have something in place unless you have a big reserve. And even if you do, OPM, other people's money, use it. Just because we could pay off to buy a new car doesn't mean we don't have car insurance. There's no reason to. So going through those basics, I think is important. But on the other side, are they saving for retirement? Again, that could be as easily as I'm doing a Roth IRA or an IRA every year. We don't need to worry about fancy plans until you're maxing that $7 grand a year. If you're only putting 2, then we don't need a company plan. The 2 things that I would then ask that person is, do you have business partners and do you have employees? Because I think the other thing that's huge in the trade world is buy-sell agreements when people have partners. And you're old enough to remember the movie Major League where the ex-wife inherits the team. Does Mr. Plumber or Mrs. Plumber want to be business partners with their partner's ex who doesn't know their business? So you've got to have a buy-sell, not only an agreement. I think that people sometimes have an agreement, but you got to fund it. So the business could own term insurance on both people, super cheap. I could own one on you. You could own one on me. So that there's no negotiation. This pays, you have the money, you buy me out, bye-bye. It's your business. I think that is critical. And again, as the companies get bigger and there's more, you can have disability agreements. Again, you got 2 partners, one gets hurt. Well, now he can't go on the roof anymore, or she can't go on the roof anymore, but he owns half the company. So you got to do all the work. That's what a disability. The very successful people in our world, and I'll just use doctors because they've been doing these things for years. If there's a dental practice, they all have those. because the other doctors don't want to make up for the doctor who got hurt. That's it. They get bought out. Law firms do it, the partner agreements. I mean, we learn from them, but I think what happens in the trade, you have a physical job, and falling off a roof or burn yourself. I mean, it's pretty easy. We're dealing with saws and torches, and everything can hurt you. By the way, disability insurance is a little harder for blue collar, but there's a lot of carriers that do it. It's easier if you're a foreman or a manager or a boss. And that's also where group plans come in, because anything in the group world, there's not underwriting. So when people already have pre-existing conditions and things like that. So, but I mean, I think it's those fundamentals everybody needs to have. Just like when you go to the doctor, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your basics. If you can't manage those, you can't move on to phase 2, 3, 4. So having the reserve account, getting your basic insurance and a plan in place, and then you start working on not only retirement, but actually saving money. You've got to pay yourself. You've got to do it every single year. You've got to pay yourself.
That's good. That's good. So, hey, we wrap things up here, Dan. How do people, well, first of all, are you only in Arizona, or
I'm licensed in, I think like 22 states. I'm in Oregon, Washington.
Wow.
I started my career and my life in Florida. So I've got clients in Florida, South Carolina. I'm working with a client right now, Oregon, and I'm eligible to work in any state, insurance or so. People always ask you for fiduciary. I'm investments, insurance. I don't do banking and lending anymore, but I have a lot of contacts. So just have a lot of experience there to help people, mortgages and things like that. But really, and I don't know if I answered it for me, anything on the insurance, life, disability, long-term care, I do direct investments, whether they're retirement accounts, annuities. People want to do stocks and bonds still. They're always fun. We still do that stuff. So I'm a stockbroker, an insurance agent, and a financial planner. Wow, wrapped in one. But, again, part of that comes because I hang my license with Mass Mutual. Right. So we always cover those things.
Sure.
But I'm also non-captive and non-proprietary, which means I can use anybody anywhere. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, I would encourage the community out here to check out Dan. I'll put his contact information up in the show notes. Great. And man, this has been a really good conversation.
Well, great anybody that comes through you, even though I would probably do it anyway, but anybody can call me with any questions. I don't charge by the hour. So if anybody heard something today that they want to ask a question about, they can email me, they can call me anytime.
Oh, that's awesome.